This is Breaking Down Security, and I am Brian Brake. Welcome back, listener. This is Brian, Miss Berlin, and Mr. Betcher for Breaking Down Security.
Hi, everybody.
Yep. So, just to let you know, if the audio sounds a little different this month, we got upgrades. Christmas came early. Yeah.
Christmas in September.
Yeah. Early September. Yeah. So, actually, the upgrades are, thanks to our lovely listeners out there who are giving us money every month. So
are you sure the audio quality is going to be better and we won't have to strain our ears anymore to hear intelligent words coming out of the podcast?
You still have to say them.
Yeah. Look, you
can't buy intelligence.
Just the difference from the snowball that Mr. Betcher has used for the past over 4 years. My earballs are tingling from his dulcet tones. And Miss Berlin's always had a lovely speaking voice, so, I can't...
What? I have a face for radio.
I have a face for radio.
Oh my God! That's why we're all on the podcast.
Yeah, audio podcast. I was on BrakeSec on Tuesday, and I felt weird looking at myself because there was a delay. And, I'd be making I was gesticulating here, and I'm like, I'm not gesticulating right now. What the hell's going on? So, but yeah, it was a good time over there with DA667 Tony and Ben Hayes. I hope I said Hayes or Heiss. And Oscar on, who's over there running RallySec. It was a good time. So check that out after you've finished listening to this, please. What are we talking about this week? We're just going to get right into it. We're going to address the elephant in the room, which as of September the 9th was the Equifax breach, but we're going to talk about that a little later. So what we wanted to first talk about was incident response, which I guess is a bit of a corollary to that. So Ms. Berlin, this week was like, hey, let's talk about incident response and the exercises and stuff. And I was like, hey, that sounds like a great idea. So what did you exactly want to discuss about incident response and exercises, Ms. Berlin?
I think just tabletops in general was my idea to talk about, just because I don't think enough people take advantage of them in general.
Okay.
Like I've talked to lots and lots of businesses, and a very small percentage seem to actually run through drills and tabletops and stuff like that. And I think there's a lot to be learned from doing them.
Well, okay. So did Mr. Betcher works for a fairly big company now. Do you guys do incident response tabletops, Mr. Betcher?
I think the reason why most companies don't is because it takes a lot of coordination. You have to get a lot of people, managers, executives, all on board, and it takes a lot of time, effort. And while they're doing the tabletop, they're not patching, vulnerabilities and running, antivirus and all that stuff. So it's really hard for companies to actually do it. Just sit down and do something that really doesn't give you any short-term benefit.
Yeah.
It's all on the long term.
Well,
right. Or it may never even happen. Right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess it really depends on the scope. I mean, for my company, we're required to at least do one a year, but that's compliance.
By whom?
By our governing body that we do a SOC 2 audit. So we're under the auspices of the SOC 2 for data centers and stuff. And our auditors suggest that we do tabletop exercises to make sure that we're, following a scenario-based thing. But that's compliance. So we try to do something quarterly in smaller groups. So we break it down to simpler scenarios like
DR failover.
DR fit. Well, well, for my company, that's a big thing.
At least even walking through it, not necessarily doing a drill.
Right.
But like going through and saying, oh, well, we won't have, these 10 pieces of software or processes that we can do when we're failed over to DR.
Yep.
And what are we going to do in the meantime if we need those when we are failed over?
Yeah.
I think like smaller drills and tabletops definitely. Like, it kills me how many people don't even test their backups.
Well,
okay, let me ask you this though.
Your backups says it's, completing fine, or, if you have backups, I guess.
Yeah.
But have you ever tried, restoring something that you might need? Do you know that process if you need something right now? I don't think a lot of people even do the small stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you guys have kids, right?
Sure.
Did you ever did you ever pretend that there's a fire, and say, okay, everybody jump out the window or whatever, or stop, drop, and roll? I mean, did you run through those scenarios?
Oh, yeah.
I've never actually done that, no.
You should.
Yeah, so
I'm a bad person.
I don't think most people do that.
I am a bad person, I know. And actually, with living in San Diego and living where we did in Austin, where we actually had to evacuate one time, it probably would have been helpful because I was not at home when my wife had to evacuate the house, and we left the cat at the house. And I think if we'd have probably had some kind of process by which, okay, we've been told to evacuate, get out. These are the checklists we need to follow and make it happen. So
I was reading the survival book that I had gotten for my birthday, and they talk about doing like active shooter drills in your house.
Wow, I know they do those at my daughter's school, but and they're actually designing new schools now to like make it so that the doors are more reinforced, and you can't look directly into a classroom, and so wow.
Like intruder drills where your kids are gonna go.
Yeah.
Because like my house has 2 stairwells. There's lots of little things that you can do even.
Yeah. Okay. So, I mean, that would be a major thing, I think, for a company. But I think active shooter drills would be something that could be possible as well, disgruntled employee or whatever. And we've seen those in the news. They don't necessarily have to
disgruntled employee could be a really good tabletop, just because maybe they're not necessarily shooting up the place, but maybe they've stolen a bunch of data or put a ticking time bomb in your data center.
Yeah.
I mean, not actually a bomb, but
logic bombs and such. Yeah.
Right.
I could actually see that, where you could actually set up the scenario ahead of time. Like you could make users in your Active Directory or your various systems for a user, quote unquote, for your, there's some prep time for your incident response tabletops, the big one at least. If you're wanting to do like, we're firing Joe Simpson, and Joe Simpson is, I'm sorry if you're Joe Simpson, you're not being fired, but so how long would it take for us to get him out? And then you'd have to invite the necessary parties if you're going to do this kind of scenario. So you need to know who you're inviting to the scenario party: HR, IT, security, audit, compliance, the C-levels. At least a couple of C-levels, or at least one C-level should be, if you have C-levels, should be involved, or at least know about it so they can join via, WebEx or whatever, phone call. The way we do it is we have to plan months in advance, like you said, Amanda. And Mr. Betcher, it was hard to schedule people to just come in next day or whatever. So, we've had to, you have a tabletop in January, you start planning for it now, getting things on calendars and making sure that people know that this is happening.
We did one once that we were given the okay by upper management to do kind of a surprise one, like a surprise drill, where one of our software guys wrote a program that mimicked stealing credit card numbers.
Oh, wow.
And we treated it like it was real.
Goodness.
And like there were 2 or 3 people that knew it wasn't.
Yeah. So, all right. So we're talking about, I think the thing we need to discuss is scope. So if you're doing a big thing, do those annually, but there's also smaller ones. Like I was just remembering the social media one. So let's say, somebody hacks social media account, because it's an account that the marketing people, they share the password. It's going to happen. You can't have a Twitter account with multiple passwords with people, So, let's say somebody accesses your social media account, at your company's social media, starts, shit posting all over the Twitters. What's the response for that? Is there a way to contact Twitter and say, we need to shut this rogue account down? Is there a way to get access back to the account and change the password and remediate the damage? You also have to think about, depending on what kind of company you are, the fallout from things like that, because somebody will be posting all kinds of stuff, and that's a reputation loss there. So you have to look at how to maybe shore up that issue, especially if
not too long ago, McAfee's LinkedIn page got owned.
I remember that. Yes. Mm-hmm. And every once in a while, some government official has their passwords hitched, or they start posting things like things they wouldn't normally post. So either they've gone on a drunken bender, or they've been hacked. I like to prefer drunken bender because you always get the truth that way. But that's me. So, Mr. Betcher, what kind of scenarios? What kind of scenarios do you guys pull up whenever you're doing your incident response stuff?
Well, like what to do if somebody has ransomed a bunch of stuff that, encrypted a bunch of things, and how do you pay them quickly? Things like that. Do you have a Bitcoin account for your company? Yeah. Run through that scenario, figure out how much time it'll take to get that Bitcoin into their wallet. I think that's pretty useful. I mean, if you're not prepared, it could take weeks.
Yeah, and what situation would you have to get to actually pay the ransom? Are there a certain amount of criteria that you'd have to hit before you take it as a loss, or you try and pay it to get the data back?
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I guess I've read stories about ransomware stuff in these small towns or whatever. They're like, we didn't even know how hard it was to get Bitcoin. It's not like you could just walk down to the local, Bitcoin ATM or whatever. You've got to register with a trading area, get a wallet, and then you've got to wire the money to somewhere. It's not easy to get those kinds of things when you're talking about malware, but it wouldn't be you shouldn't have to have malware if you're doing what's necessary to protect yourself from those things. So, you got to look at your threats, right? So,
which tabletops help you do.
Okay, so the tabletops look at one specific threat, right? Not all of your threats.
Right.
So you would have to have additional meetings before the tabletop to decide on, I don't know, like what
I think if you don't really have any idea what your threats are, tabletop could be a good idea. I mean, a good way to go through it all, right?
Yeah.
You could just have a group of people sit down and are like, all right, well, we know losing this database or having this database hacked would really screw us over, and then kind of work back from there. Like, how could they get access to it? And, what medium? Because you also have to have a group of people that create the tabletop scenario, right? Because there's, a lot of stuff that you have to think of when you're creating it. And, in the end, you want a playbook so you can react to either a specific scenario or a broader idea of one.
Yeah.
Like loss of service or whatever. Like loss of service could be a lot of different specific threats.
Right.
That all kind of lead to the same thing.
Yep.
They help you figure out things that you probably wouldn't have thought of.
Right.
For example, if let's just say I'm a hacker and I found a vulnerability in your website, how do I get a hold of you? Who do I call? Is there something embedded in your website that hackers would know that's there because they've just seen, you've got a comment in there? Call this number if you see issues with our site, yada, yada. Or is there a main number on your site that they can call? And when they do, the person that answers, just call it. The person that answers, are they gonna know what to do, or are they just gonna think it's a prank caller?
Yeah.
And then the hacker has no choice but to publicize the vulnerability.
Well,
you have to run through those scenarios as well.
Yeah, I want to believe that people are actually going to, out of the goodness of their heart, call you or send you an email telling you there's vulnerabilities on their page. But I think with the rise of bug bounty programs, hackers are expecting something out of their hard work, and I'm using that in quotey fingers. If they run Nikto or something and they find this vulnerability, they're going to expect you to reciprocate with some kind of money or some kind of, I think that's becoming more and more
of someone who knows what they're talking about, and they just get blown off. Right?
Yeah,
that's a bad situation. So you want to try and avoid that.
True.
What if the press calls? Who gets that call?
Yeah.
Are they going to get someone who doesn't know what they're doing, and finally they just publicize it and say, well, your company had no comment?
True.
So it looks bad on you. So you need to nip that in the bud as soon as you can, and make sure that the people answering the phone, answering the emails, know who to contact. Do they contact the CISO? Right? Do you have a canned response ready to go just immediately?
Yeah.
There's a lot of things that you might not think of, that running these scenarios actually would help you think of these things, because you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Yep.
And this will help you flush those questions out.
Yep.
And you'll get answers to them.
You'll get your deficiencies pretty quickly, and that's that goes along the remediation, because we did this in the 504 class with incident response. You're finding out in the the lessons learned what you need to fix, and there'll be some processes you got to fix. There's some maybe call trees you have to create, some decision maps that you have to modify or create because they don't exist. You may have to you may find out you're deficient in something, so you may end up having to buy something. So you'll have to set aside some budget, or you have to set aside time afterwards, or fix some of the issues that you've got going on.
Or some pre-approved budget items that you might need.
Yeah.
Right. Don't use them now, but in the event of a incident of this type, you've got pre-approval to do these things. And it doesn't have to be monetary. It could be taking resources away from certain projects.
Yeah.
Because this might be bigger than, or more important than that.
True. So, I guess you would have to look at whatever is your, in your PMO, your project management organization, to, when you're remediating this, you have to plug these into the priorities that are already there. So you may find a massive issue that, takes immediate priority over anything else that's going on, because it really opens you up to all kinds of vulnerabilities. So,
and then you can answer the question, well, do we have a retainer for some other expert outsource job that we need? What is the average time if we don't have a retainer, that if we do hire them, they can come on site? It might be a month, right?
Yep.
Whereas if you had a retainer, they would be there the next day.
Unless you want to pay that 3 times their normal cost for after hours. Holy shit, I've never talked to you before, and I need you out on site right now.
It may very well be that, depending on the value of the data that was lost, or the what was uncovered, it may be worth the 3x. You need to come in now, the sky's the limit, blank check kind of thing.
Yeah, but
you need to know those up front.
If you had a relationship with them before that happened, it might save a shit ton of money.
Sure. Like I tell people, when you got to network before you actually need a new job, you may need to network with an IR company before you actually need them. So they're like an additional insurance policy. So you might do a staff augmentation, because if your people are working the incident response, you may need to bring additional people on to make sure that normal operations are happening. So so we have an author on the show, Miss Amanda. If you haven't been listening, or you're new, welcome. But she wrote a book. It was Defensive Security Handbook. She wrote it all by herself.
I did.
Some guy.
No help from anybody.
No help
Especially
at all.
Honorary British people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Canadians.
He ghost wrote part of it. We could say that. He probably ghost wrote.
I guess.
Yeah.
I guess.
Lee Brotherston. No, he's a good dude. He wrote a little bit of it. I do remember in the book club every time we'd be like, "Who wrote this?" And she'd be like, "That was Lee.
Not
Lee
me.
wrote
That was Lee's.
Yeah.
That was Lee's chapter.
Yeah, this doesn't make any sense. Oh yeah, Lee wrote that." So, yeah. I always kept looking for like British spellings of color or favorite or anything like that.
Oh, I had to go through and remove so many U's. So many.
You edited his words.
Oh yeah, lots of them.
Wowzers.
And there's a couple saying, because he tried not to, but there's a couple ways that he said things.
Oh yeah.
That made absolutely no sense to how I would speak.
So this word right here, exercises, is not spelled with a Z.
Right.
So right. I can tell he wrote that.
Yeah.
Well, exercise isn't spelled with a Z.
It is in America.
And maybe in America, but not America. So anyway, she wrote a book and she wrote a section on incident response. So she was talking about tabletop exercises, limiting the scope. You talk about a moderator or a facilitator.
Yeah.
Is that always necessary, or should it be like an open venue kind of thing, or is this just somebody who's?
I think with some of the bigger ones, it really helps. Also, depending on, the type of people, I guess.
Yeah.
But some people can really dominate the conversation.
Yeah.
You want to make sure somebody's there moderating to make sure everybody gets to say what they need to say to get it done, and people aren't going off track. Like, that's their job. Their job isn't to, go along with the exercise and make sure you're not forgetting anything. Their job is to make sure everybody's paying attention and, that the tabletop doesn't last a week.
Yeah. So would it be helpful to have a third party be the facilitator or mediator? Because sometimes you might be inviting, if it's me, for instance, and I'm inviting my boss to the thing, it might be a little, I don't know, I want to say intimidating, but if he says, well, we're going to do it this way. And you're like, oh, well, how about this? What if the culture's not there where you can say to your boss, you don't know what you're talking about?
Right. Now, I think like maybe a good, like a project manager or administrative assistant or something like that. Somebody that's good at leading a group of people. I think you should also have, everybody should have a piece of paper where, like, if you said, your boss is there and he doesn't know what he's talking about, and you feel like you would be able to add to that part of the conversation, that you would be able to write something down and hand it to that moderator after it's all said and done.
Yeah.
So like there's an end report or, a wrap up conference call or something like that she'd be able to bring that up in.
Yeah.
Or he.
So you make sure you have a good dungeon master so that when you start this adventure that, you can pass notes and, they'll understand it. So I totally agree. And so when you have those kinds of disagreements, that information, the dissenting opinion should definitely go into the report, not necessarily naming names like, this guy thought it was a stupid idea or whatever, but, he thinks it should be done this way. You should just have the dissenting opinion in the report, so that way it's been chronicled that, in right. A high level, and I told you so was there. So if it does happen that way, then you can, it will be known that that opinion was raised. So
right.
Let's see. You got some other points here. Exercise should also evaluate the overall. So a member of the exercise should evaluate the overall performance of the exercise.
Yeah, like each person.
Okay, so there's like a survey. How well do you think this worked?
Yep.
Do you think that the answers given will solve the question or solve the issue?
And I also think that facilitator should, lay out the ground rules in the beginning and let everybody know that, it should be open and honest, and this isn't like
no blame game.
Nicely want to say it.
No blame game.
Yeah, right. Like a blame game or anything like that. You should be able to give your fact-based opinions. Yeah.
When we did our tabletop exercise, it was about a year ago, less than a year ago. Yeah, we were quick to mention that too. It was like, there are no wrong answers. If we're not doing something, say we're not doing something. If we are doing it, great. You know, we can address those things later, because you do want that safe environment, because if people aren't giving out all the necessary information, it's not helpful to the exercise. You know, you need to know if you're not doing regular backups, or, we have an SLA of 8 seconds. Well, it takes 10 seconds to load the page. So we're not, we're busting the SLA. So, I mean, if that's something that's important, or, could be damaging in the long run, those things need to come to light, because these are why you do these exercises, so that if something does go wrong, you already know that this is going to be a normal reaction. And then, maybe it's not an IR at all. It may just be an event. So.
Right. Yeah. And I think the best one I was ever in, I was there as, when I worked for Hurricane. So as their MSSP for their SOC and their SIM and everything. Mm-hmm. And, Trusted Sec was actually their like red team provider. Right. Mm-hmm. So we were both in the room. Oh. And we got to give like he would give his attack perspective on it, if if they brought up something like that, and different ways to get in or whatever, and I would let them know if we could detect it, and it wasn't just their internal security team.
Right. Very good.
That's valuable.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so speaking of incident response, we're gonna move over to the one that everybody's been talking about. So on the 7th of September 2017, Equifax, which is one of the big three credit monitoring organizations, along with TransUnion and Experian, suffered what appears to be a breach. And not only did it affect 143 million Americans, it also affected a number of U.S. and Canadian people as well. I don't have numbers on the U.S. and Canadian people, but everyone just is worried about the 143 million Americans, U.S. Americans. So according to Krebs, and I'm just going to quote off of Krebs' site, because, and I'm sure there's going to be other stuff as well.
Because I would trust it over anybody else.
Yeah. Yeah, he seems to be fairly decent. He actually put dumpster fire in the title of his article, which it's so not good. And then
it's such a good article.
It is. It's great. So somebody got in, and from what everybody is saying, and from what Krebs was saying, that there was a vulnerability on Equifax's website, and it was the recent one had been about the Apache Struts vulnerability. And Struts is a framework that allows you to serve up pages. So, I don't use Struts myself, so it's a web framework, much like I would imagine it's something very similar to Django or whatever, where you actually. Oh God, people are gonna flame me with that. But so let me ask you something. What have you guys been looking at, and what have you heard about on this whole thing?
I haven't heard much.
Where have you been?
Other than, hey, you should get your credit frozen or whatever. Yeah. So, okay, so these companies make money off of people trying to freeze their credit. They charge them $10 a piece or whatever. Mm-hmm. So now are they going to make a fortune because everybody needs to freeze their credit?
Well, okay, so...
Right, including Equifax? I mean, are they going to make a killing on this breach?
They will... That is a valid point. I mean, if they're making money, for you to stop your credit, which basically means anything that tries to create a new credit card or tries to buy a line of credit or create a line of credit or a house or a car, anything that requires financing has to run a credit check for validity. Yeah, I mean, if it costs $5 to $10 to lock your credit down so that you can't do that, I've heard it's very easily unlocked. But what I saw and heard today, the 8th and 9th actually, of September, on Twitter, is that when you lock your credit in Equifax's website, the PIN that they give you to unlock it is actually the date time group of when you locked it.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah. So if I locked it right now, it would be 2017 0909 1904 because it's 7:04 Pacific time, my time. Actually, it may be UTC time, which would be like 0404. Apparently, this has been going on for almost 10 years. Some people lambasted that. They were like, "Oh my God," and I was trying initially to figure out how that's I mean, it sounds like crap and it sounds awful, but there was actually.
I guess it's as difficult to guess as a randomly generated number, right? Unless you know that somebody's going to lock it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so on Twitter, some people had said that you don't even, because I said, well, I mean, what's bad about that? Do you have to be physically near the person to know what time they logged off? I said, Bill, Mr. Semph, who we've had on the show recently, he was like, that's dumb, but how would you exploit it? I said, well, you can man in the middle of the connection, assuming TLS ciphers blow, allowing for the man in the middle. And then somebody who, Tony Webster, said, you don't even need to break the TLS, you just need to see what time they stopped accessing freeze.equifax.com. So in that case, you could get a rough time of when they stopped looking at the site. You don't even need to intercept. You can just look at the encrypted data and the headers on the packets and find out what time that was. And I guess
or you could just hack in the back and go and unfreeze everybody's all at the same time.
Yeah, or you could just call them up and go, hey, this is Equifax. I need your PIN so that I can verify that it's okay.
Because I mean, most people are going after numbers. They're not going after one specific target.
Yeah.
To steal their identity. So.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it wouldn't be hard to crack that because if it's really the date time group, year, month, and day are all the same. And if you just, and time, if you can get it within an hour or so. So you really only have to try a maximum of 60, or 120 times on the pin to reset somebody's pin. So, I mean, it's not.
There may be a limit of 3.
Well, hopefully there's a limit. I haven't
freeze your freeze.
Right? Yeah, I haven't actually locked mine yet because I don't even think I
need somebody to go freeze their credit.
Yeah.
And try and unlock it as many times as they can with wrong numbers.
Yeah. Give it a try and unlock it. Yeah.
I'm not doing it with mine, so feel free.
Yeah. My thing is, and I've seen this the last couple weeks, is somebody had a weird password authentication mechanism where you would, for putting your password in, it was like 8 characters, and they had blanked out like 5 of the characters, and they said, oh yeah, just put in the 3 characters of your password to get in. And I was like, what developer thought that was a good authentication mechanism,
Right.
And like this one, it's like some developer out there thought that this was terribly clever just to be able to freeze something, and they coded this whole thing up and like, oh yes, we will just allow them to use the date time group of the day that it was. I don't know if any security people thought of that. And really I don't want to say my heart goes out to the security people there, but I'm sure that the people who work there in the security office are not having a good weekend. And if they're listening to this, it will get better.
They need a hug or something.
They do need a hug. And if any of them are at DerbyCon, you can come up quietly to me and go, hey, I work for Experian still, and I will buy you a fine adult beverage.
I'm not sure they're going to get any time off anytime soon.
Well, I always hate it when podcasts sort of laugh and make fun of people or companies getting breached.
It could happen to any of us.
We don't know the circumstances.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
Not yet.
We don't.
There'll be more information coming out about, who the actor was.
Maybe. There's
some rumors out there that somebody has a dump of the database and they were trying to sell it for 600 Bitcoin. There's also supposedly a class action forming for Equifax. And we talked about this before the show. My question is, and my wife actually brought this up because she's terribly, terribly much smarter than me. Most class actions have to show damage, like damage was incurred from the breach.
All right.
So with the data that was leaked from Experian, can they prove that actual damage occurred this time versus the other times all the other data breaches have occurred? Like, could they say, well, nothing that has been breached from Equifax, I've said Experian a few times, sorry, I meant Equifax. Nothing that has been breached from Equifax has not already been shared in X breach. The OPM breach affected, several 100 million people, or, a couple of 75, 80 million people. All of my data was stolen there because I've been in the Navy, a government defense contractor, and a government civilian. So both OPM breaches got me. The VA breach, of course, there's been several of those, so I'm sure some of my information is in there, along with fingerprints and DNA and such. Can they say, hey, all the data that's already out there, this is just a duplicate of that data? Yeah, I think it's going to be hard to prove damage.
It is, but HHS or whatever government entity will probably slap them with millions of dollars anyway. So,
yeah, I mean, the government.
I don't think do the individuals ever see anything out of these class action?
Yeah, that's the
lawsuits?
other thing. I was like, only real winners are going to be the
here's
lawyers.
$40. That's your share of the.
Man,
millions.
I've never even gotten $40. I think the most I've gotten is like $7.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Don't even bother.
I think the Amazon.
It's for the lawyers.
I think the Amazon price fixing thing, I got like $20 from an Amazon gift card. So, but yeah, the lawyers are going to be the only ones a real winner in the class action. There's not going to,
Oh yeah.
So I don't understand the point of the class action at this point for something this massive. Because no amount of money is going to get your privacy back if you've never ever been breached by any other time, and this is the first time any of your data has ever made it out. $150 isn't going to save you. If you even get $150 from the class action. So I'm not exactly sure, what Equifax is going to do. Do they pay the ransom if there's a ransom out there?
I don't know. Well, you said that they were selling it for 600 Bitcoin.
That's the rumor. That's what I've read online, that somebody was offering 600 Bitcoin for that, and if they didn't get it by the 15th of September, they were just going to dump it anyway. Which also makes me wonder why the timeline, why the deadline? Is it that much less valuable after the 15th?
Why would you pay it though? They could just dump it afterwards anyways.
That's my point as well. I mean, something this large, would they even, where's the trust? It's not like it's a ransomware thing where you pay the 600 Bitcoin and then they're going to unlock your boxes. I don't know. I mean, there's so much still going on with this, and I hope we hear more about it. I'm sure we'll hear more. What am I saying? I hope we hear more. We will hear more about it next week. And, like I said, if you work at Equifax, and you're in the security department, I hope it will get better for you. Take advantage.
Apologies to Experian, by the way.
Yeah. Well, they're all the same at this point. They all have the same data. So they're probably sweating it too, because, there's a trust model there that's been broken. If it can be done to one, it can be done to all of them. So if you work for Equifax, it will get better. If you are still working there, when this is all over and the dust clears, make sure that you don't waste this crisis. If you needed a blinky box, they'll buy it for you. Trust me. If you need new applications or something, don't waste this crisis. Use it. So, all right. So that was it. Let me see. We have a Slack that you can join for the show. Go to brakesec.signup.team and you can be on that. We just started a DerbyCon channel. So if you are going to DerbyCon and you want to, not use Signal or Wire or one of the other 1,500 other encrypted comms junk, and need to be able to not, wait for people to tweet you or something, you can join our Slack and get on our DerbyCon channel and, talk to people immediately. So,
should we tell them about the thing we're doing too?
Yeah. So BrakeSec is doing a meetup at DerbyCon on Friday night. Miss Amanda has the Eventbrite link on our Slack as well, so you can join us in the DerbyCon channel or in the general channel and sign up for that. So we're going to be doing that at the old spaghetti factory there on Friday night. So we need a head count. So come in, RSVP, and you can join us and have dinner and talk to other people and network and have a good old time. So I think they have wine there too. Wine. So
they do.
If you want to, have an adult beverage while you're with your, your manicotti or whatever, your tiramisu, that's always available. So, Mr. Betcher, if people, I love me some tiramisu. I
like what you did there.
What's that?
That was nice.
What?
Your manicotti.
Manicotti or tiramisu, yeah. I love them both. They're excellent.
I see what you did there.
Yeah. You'll have to tell me because I just went over my head. So, yeah.
Like, I just figured you meant your date.
Oh,
like your
right.
Manicotti, and then you had to come up with a girl version, so you said tiramisu.
Girl version? I love tiramisu. That stuff's
like
awesome.
Sue.
Oh,
like the name.
Oh, yes. Okay. I didn't get it, so I get it now. It's awesome.
You did a really good job, even though you didn't do it on purpose.
I know, right? Yeah, so Mr. Betcher, if people wanted to get a hold of you and discuss information security or incident response, how would they do so?
Hit me up on the DM, Twitter.
Okay.
My, what do you call it? My handle is @BetcherPwned, BOETTCHER, my last name, PWNED.
Excellent. Ms. Berlin, who wrote a book called Offensive Security Handbook, which the link will be in the show notes. How would people go about talking to you? Because you work for a service provider again, right? A different service provider?
I work for Networks Group now.
Okay. I've never heard of them before you started joining them. It's not a slight on them. It's just
I think that's why they hired me, purely for marketing purposes.
Oh, don't say that. It's because you're highly talented. You're going to be building out their blue teams, so they obviously see value in building out the blue team. So you're going to be taking these scenarios that you find on the internet and from Equifax and them, and making sure it doesn't happen to you guys. So
right.
All right. So how would people get a hold of you if they wanted to discuss the book or incident response or blue teaming or whatever?
Pretty much Twitter @InfoSystir, INFOSYSTIR.
Cool. Yep. So you're fairly active on the Slack. Mr. Betcher is on Twitter, so he sometimes comes into the Slack. So but when he does, it's all gems. It's all good stuff. So very much malware and talking about that. So you can follow the official BrakeSec podcast on Twitter @BrakeSec, BRAKESEC. You can follow me @Brian Brake. That's BRYANBRAKE. I have a local meetup in Seattle. If you're in the Seattle area, Bellevue, Redmond, that area, it's called CSEC East. We meet the first Tuesday of every month, except for this month we met the first Wednesday. But we try to be consistent and have something every month. You can follow us @CSEC East, SEASECEAST. And come out and have some fun, network with local security people in the Seattle area. We would love to have you come out. So you can find BrakeSec on iTunes, Google Play Store. If you find value in the show, you can also hit us up on our Patreon, which is in the show notes. That stuff is used to buy upgrades like we did with our audio here. It's also for time and effort and Libsyn hosting. So, that's always good. We just finished a PowerShell class with Mick Douglas last week, so we are currently talking to our next instructor for an intro to reverse engineering course, and he is going to be working that with us. He's got a syllable written, and it looks like it's going to be about 3 to 4 weeks, and it's going to be all about debugging and basic things like shellcode creation and understanding how to analyze binaries, I think. So if you are interested in that, you can join our Slack, and we'll have more information there as it becomes available. So
you said syllable. He's got one syllable written.
Did I say? Oh, I meant syllabus, like a bus, syllabus.
Yeah. I mean, if it's a syllabus, but he has only one written, it could be a syllable.
It's a syllabi.
Syllabi.
Syllabi. Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
It's multiple syllabuses.
Yeah, syllabuses. That's right. Yeah. Wow, I don't even know what a multiple syllabus is. So yeah, I think that was it for this week on Breaking Down Security. Please have a great week. Stay safe if you're in the Florida area, because Irma's kicking your ass right now. And we will talk to you again real soon.
Bye. Bye.
And we're clear. Awesome. Yeah, it's rough talking about news that's happening. It's still in flux. So
yeah,
interesting tweet that just came in 6 hours ago, but I just noticed it on my tweet deck. Ed Porter, he said, if a $15 billion company like Equifax can't handle their security, what does that mean for the rest of us? Very interesting question. It'd be the same as Microsoft, which is a arguably $100 billion company. They handle, they're not a small company. Equifax is not a small company. So
it's harder.
I think it all comes down to if you analyze all of the breaches that have been made public and you just take the number of employees. I mean, somebody has done the math. It's all about number of employees.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Well, it may also be that, it might be like the Katrina moment. After, post-Katrina in 2004, they found out that the levee system hadn't been maintained properly or hadn't been updated in years, and they didn't because they didn't want to spend the money to do so. So, if you can get through another year without any major issues happening, you've saved all that money. Whereas if it's like insurance. If you pay for it, but you never use it,
it is insurance.
After a while, you think it's a waste of money until something bad does happen. And then it's like you're spending a shit ton of money to fix an issue. So this, InfoSec is starting to become more like insurance, where you should be building that up and treating it like insurance instead of, a cost center. So, and I think that's a perception issue on our part too. We don't treat it like, if we treated it like insurance, and my wife, I love my wife, she's so damn smart. She said, if you get into a numbers conversation about security, you've already lost. You need to treat it completely as risk. Because if you can show that the risk is possible, the numbers guy has to back down because,
Right.
But if you start talking about numbers and how much things cost, you've already lost the battle because the numbers guy's going to walk all over you. So